Hello, everybody. I am glad to see a lot of folks here. We're starting to see pretty consistent repeatability here, as well as multiple members for attendance. My name is Andrews. I'm a Hierophant of the Church of Witchcraft. Basically, I just make sure everything doesn't go too far off the rails. Rank isn't really a huge important factor for us, but it is something that we need to keep in mind so that we can help keep people on the rails and keep us focused as well. I mean, not everybody wants to deal with admin stuff, so we try to offload that by also giving that responsibility to the synod. Further beyond that, I practice celestial witchcraft. Celestial witchcraft is basically planetary magic, think astrology on steroids. And it's basically the easiest way to phrase that. Also, thanks to whoever's watching this in the future and everybody who's here currently, you can also find all of our previous recordings on YouTube. You can get that through our website as well. Like I said, throughout this, we'll have some time to talk, and I would love feedback, of course, for this too, because this is going to take a little bit of a different track than I have. One thing that I've realized is that while education is super important and skill set is really important, there are other considerations, right? Last time we talked, I believe it was last time we talked about ethics and just the ethics of witchcraft, spellcraft, that kind of thing, you know, and so that may have led to some of the other considerations. And I will be following that through to today. Take everything I say with a grain of salt is the best way that I'm going to phrase that. There's definitely a call to action in this. It's going to be a little stout would be the best way to phrase that. So a call to action is one that we don't do often, but I think that needs to be done more. And that's on all sides. That's on my side. Always hold me and everybody else here accountable for everything that they do. So this is going to be in that heavy words. The topic for us tonight is to guide your personal demon in relation to the political community we inhabit. I'm going to give you guys that one again. So guide your personal demon in relation to the political community that we inhabit. So talking about defining what demon is and political is, we have to look at both of these phrases. Marcus Aurelius is one of the Stoic philosophers from forever ago that gives us some interesting wisdom about what that is, and some of that references to the demon that I'm talking about now. You can talk about them either as literal things, you can talk about them as figurative things, or representative things, such as egregores, that kind of thing. Whether or not demons exist is entirely up to your personal preference and system or tradition. Aurelius uses demon or daimon as a synonym of reason throughout the Meditations. That is what he's most well known for. Didn't actually publish himself. A bunch of students after him posted that he didn't originally have interest in posting that. They were his personal, it's like your personal journal got published. It's basically what this is. So it's a lot of his personal thoughts about his family and about life as an emperor at the time. So if you replace the word demos or daemon from his book with the phrase, the English phrase, reason, the whole thing still makes sense. This means to connect to nous, which is a Greek concept, and it's also referenced in nous, N-O-U-S, is referencing intellect. So the demon, the reason that we have, is related to the intellect that we're talking about, and that's the demonic intelligence that we have. One thing that you will face within this kind of construct pretty consistently, anybody who's thinking and reasoning, or a rational animal, as Aurelius posts or writes, that anti-intellectualism and fear of knowing is rampant in Christian theology and across almost all Abrahamic stuff, pretty much all thought ever, at least in contemporary, even in history. You will see this anti-intellectual sort of concept. Lucifer, being a light bringer, as an example, is a bringer of knowledge and wisdom. Whenever you see the Baphomet with the candle above his head, that is symbolizing wisdom. It's the ability to know. And this is the demon that I'm referencing, that Aurelius is referencing, is that reasonable intellect, that we're rational animals. The problem with this is, especially if you just think about anything with the Vatican, if you suddenly have the ability to understand, question things, people get really nervous. And you start questioning things like, I don't know, gender equality, sex equality, all of those things that happen. Who has the money? Who has the rights? This actually caused a whole uproar when they switched from the standard Latin to Vulgar Latin. When they brought it to Vulgar Latin, that meant the majority of the populace could now understand what the Bible was saying, and now they could ask questions. And this is not just the beginning of anti-intellectualism. This goes way, 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 way back. And specifically is important into, witchcraft as well. They were wise people, wise women, wise men. They knew things. And there's a fear to that, because if you know things, I'm going to use the same cliche, knowledge is power. It really is. If I know which herbs are going to heal me or assuage my pain or make something more functional, that's a powerful thing to do to alleviate somebody's pain. And that is a lot of what witches did in the past, that they were these healers, these soothsayers, right? And that was original, a lot of those herbologists back then were essentially just the doctors of now. And that's something so important that knowledge continues to go through. Don't fear your intellect, really lean into that. And so this is referencing back to the original call to action. When we continue this definition, we talk about what political means. Political would get kind of hot, cold-footed on this as well. We start thinking, oh, we're going to talk about bipartisanship. Nope, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking old terms. Okay, so terms of antiquity. Political relates to the polis, P-O-L-I-S, or the community. It is the science of the city in its original form. It is the study of the city-state complex. And that's just how city and state reflects and connects together, right? And those different pieces. And with that, what makes up the community is people, right? So if we have this demonic intelligence, this reason, this intellect, how is that going to interface, that knowing, with our city-state complex? What about all the things that govern us? The laws, the rules, the ethics, the morals, all of those things that we talked about last time we met here. Those are going to be how we're going to interface with that. This takes it to another deeper level, I suppose. Now, my observations of our political community, and our political community is that of witchcraft, of the pagans, of people outside of paganism, and this is the system that we are all working in. We're in a system right now. This is a microcosm of the system, but the people who are attending here are in their own political community. But you have a broader political community as well. In my observations of this political community, I've been in and around the pagan community for the majority of my existence. And so I have a lot of observations, a lot of recent observations, and the position, the hierarchy that we have gives me some unique insight. People who contact the church, for example, we just had a correctional center in Utah. They reached out to us for information and knowledge. So it gives me a different kind of perspective that not everybody's going to be privy to, not through any other means than just access. But again, that's that power of knowledge. What this means for me is that there are wide-ranging aspects that I've seen across a lot of the Facebook groups, a lot of meetup groups, YouTube channels, smaller groups, coven groups, circles, take your pick. Many of the connective efforts that we have taken, either by leaders or people who have tried to take on the mantle, they have some follow through, I'll give them that, but then there's a collapse. So people get they're really ramped up to do something. I want to start a coven, I want to start a meetup, I want to do something. Then they formulate, they run for about 2 to 3 months. 3 months is usually pretty successful, and then there's a collapse. This is usually due to exhaustion and burnout from the organizers and even the attendees. It's a two-way street, right? The organizers are doing things or changing things too dramatically for the political community that they're working with to be able to handle, right? There's a certain level of flexibility that exists, and not just the planning that goes into this. Cardinal Ember reminds us also, and I really have enjoyed this phrase all too much, about a bad case of life. It is not fair to not consider what people are going through. Just because I have I guess you could say, privilege to have these things. I have a location to do this in. I have the platform that exists. There's a lot of privilege that I experience that some others just don't have. And then it's just beyond even this. If you're talking just monetary resources, having a stable job, making sure your car doesn't explode, right? Illness, health, all of those things are weighing on individuals within that political community. And I have the privilege that most of those things are stable, and if they ever falter, I can fix them. Not everybody can. And so we need to make sure that we understand that people will have a bad case of life. The problem comes in when you stay in that bad case of life and fail to rectify that or make any efforts to do anything about it. Nobody can do this for you. You have to do it for yourself. And this is important because if we're not doing that for ourselves, how can we best interact with our political community? If we're interacting in a way that we're not stable or we're not ready to take on, so you get really revved up, I want to go do something, but your life is really unstable, that effort, that initiative is going to go nowhere. It's just going to implode. Maybe you do get somewhere. That's almost worse because now you have a whole bunch of people that have signed up to do stuff with you, and then you leave because of whatever is going on in your life. How is that fair to the political community? You have a duty to sustain this. I don't always want to be doing all of the duties that I have self-taken on, but I saw that there was something important to do, and so I made sure that consistency was key. And a lot of people made sure that there's consistency was key. Church wouldn't exist, the Church of Witchcraft wouldn't exist without those people being mostly consistent the majority of the time. A lack of attention to our first altar is another aspect that we run into, that I see often. And this is where that's kind of that not taking care of yourself, not being within your own practice, not doing those things, not questioning those things. There is self-reflection, but often it's isolated to certain events within that bad case of life or curiosity. It usually stops at the individual, and there's less of an outreach to the political community or an assessment of what that could mean for my own well-being to then interact with that community. Our attention to our first altar comes from being, and I haven't defined this, so we talk about the first altar a lot, which is the altar of the self. We take in magic as witches and then make transformations from there, from our first altar. But what does it mean for you to take care of first altar? Does it just mean practice? Does that mean, what do I even mean by that? And I realize I never defined that either. The first altar care has to do with multiple pieces. It has to do with your discipline, it has to do with your self-reflection, it has to do with consideration of that political community, it has to do with managing yourself. It also has to do with all of your spellcraft, your divination, and those are aspects that you can use to then inform your own self-care, right? So through divination, we can learn things, we can plumb depths that other people won't in a unique way. We can use spellcraft to bend things. And the barriers that I see then from these observations have to do with social media being a barrier. It's just toxic to some people. It is not anybody else's responsibility to manage your experience of a thing, especially social media. Social media can be toxic or helpful. It really is just how you're going to undertake the interaction. Use it as a tool. It is not the end all be all of everything. A lot of it's a bunch of misinformation. There's a lot of free access to terrible information and, getting mired in a bunch of things that don't matter. There's a lot of distraction in many groups that I'm consistently within and I continue to monitor just out of pure curiosity to even have anything to say about this. But within those groups, there's such a diversion. There are important topics within them, gender and sex being one of the main ones that tends to pop up fairly frequently. But then when we're only focused on gender and sex, then what does that mean for what the group is? If the group is based in witchcraft, while yes, gender and sex are critical to understanding, is that the best forum for us to be having an extended discussion about that? Or is the forum really about the witchcraft that we're doing? And if it is about the witchcraft, then where are the conversations happening? Where are the challenges to witchcraft that is happening? And this is part of your own intelligence, right? People are going to say things. People are going to critique things. You can say anything in a vacuum. If you're by yourself, everything is true. Anything you say is true. But the minute that you make it public, the minute that enters the community, it then becomes challengeable. And that's hard. That's a very difficult thing. Because when you start getting challenged and you're wrong, that can be hard to handle. And this can lead to bad case of life. It can lead to withdrawing. It can relate to things like, if you want to know information about that, take divination like I was mentioning before. The Hermit in Tarot, right? About introspection, about retreating into oneself, about that kind of self-analysis. Interact with that. Use a pendulum. Talk to the Hermit avatar. Figure out what that means for you. That's what witchcraft can do for you as a character first alter, to address those challenges and let yourself be in those challenging spaces. Don't stay there, and think of some way to move through that. What can you learn from it? I have to do the same thing. I am not in any way above any of these things. And that's generally what I use or implement witchcraft mostly for, is a lot of self-serving stuff. While yes, that's important, I'm realizing that a lot of my witchcraft does not pertain to the community. And this I would like to correct for myself and for the community. I have this ability to do these kinds of introspective things, but then what? I don't share that with anybody? Is that a disservice to the community? Possibly, right? At least it's not me enforcing you have to do these things, just that the information is even there. But if I only hold on to that information for myself, that intellect, that reason can no longer exceed the boundaries of my own siloed information that I have in my own singular truth. And it needs to be challenged. And so I welcome challenge to anything that I say. I am not canon law for anybody to follow. I have good suggestions, I suspect. Many people have seemed to benefit from it, from experience, but always feel free to challenge any of the leadership that's within the Church of Witchcraft. And frankly, even if you're in a system or in a political community that says, no, don't challenge me, you're probably in something that's very toxic and you should probably get out or get away from it as fast as you can, because they aren't welcoming that change. Just like the Vatican and the siloing of knowledge into the elite, the clergy of that time, that era. The practice in barriers to witchcraft. Sometimes your practice won't even do anything for you. And what right do you have to what you're going to gain from that? Do you just have automatic access to that? That's a really interesting question for me too to answer. I don't generally work with deities, but far be it for me to say that the planetary avatars I work with must answer me and give me a response. I feel like that would be very egotistical of me to assume that I could just demand this information and have it on tap at all times. I will say that it increases with functionality the more frequently I do it. When I'm at prayer at the altar, when I'm working on those things, the more consistently I do it, the more access I do gain, because it's showing the sacrifice to that, the time, the effort, all of that stuff. Sometimes my prayer doesn't go anywhere. Sometimes it just feels empty. I feel disconnected and it's frustrating and hard. Just like it's going to be hard for you sometimes when you're casting spells or doing divination, you just won't get an answer. Who knows for what, any number of reasons, but it's on us to address that, to accept that challenge, not just from our divination side, our religious side, or our practice side, but also from the external community. Information overload is another barrier to witchcraft. There is so much information about the occult. How do you know what's true? How do you know it's not? I don't know what to tell you. Really, the biggest thing that I can say is you're going to have to try a whole bunch of things and just see what fits for you. There are systems that are going to work. There are traditions that are going to work, and there are some that just won't, that you won't feel connected to. The eyes, heart, and hands of a witch that I talked about last year had to do with being observant of what those connections are. Do I feel a connection? Do I feel vibrations? Is there a change somewhere that I can detect that shows me that the system is working? Is my life improving? Do my spells work? Like, all of these things are metrics that you can use, and a plethora of more that you can. But if you're not looking for those things, if you just want a quick fix, it's not going to get you anywhere, right? There's going to be times that it doesn't work. There's going to be times that it does work, just like in any relationship. You're going to be able to give things, but you're not always going to get things. And it's not a 50-50 guarantee. Just won't be. And if that's frustrating, you're right. And that's what we're here for too, is that clergy can answer some of those challenges, can walk through those with you, that can experience that with you and just go, man, this sucked today. Great. I'm glad it sucked for you today, because that means you have new information that you didn't have before, because now you know something different. But with the info overload, find where you're going to work, keep a record of it, right? And that's going to be the best way you can do. Read everything that you can, talk to people, challenge people, ask these questions. The general public can also be a barrier to witchcraft, from active protest, from denial, from any of those aspects, from people not believing you, from people, whatever. It doesn't matter, whatever they think. What they think isn't what's going to dictate your practice. You get to dictate what you're going to do with that. You are the one that's going to apply or not apply things from the external to your internal world. That's not on anybody else to do. One great question that I would have is that when we're experiencing, when you feel anger, you get in a situation, whose responsibility is it that caused that anger? Does anybody have any guesses? Yeah, well, Gwen's over here. She's pointing to herself. Basically, the anger that you feel, the outrage that you might feel, that's your responsibility, not just to manage, but they don't get to make you feel angry. You get to partake in that. And then you get in this, dance with this other person about being angry and you spiral off into nothingness. Just like you get into arguments that aren't constructive, right? Within witchcraft, within whatever your practice is. Who cares if you want to dance around in a spiral in your basement and call that good and that's how you connect and that's your trance state? No one can say that that's wrong. I mean, they can, but it doesn't matter because you still are going to do that. That's still how you're going to access, regardless of what anybody else says. If you aren't feeling connection and when somebody asks you that question, then you go to do your spiral dance in the basement, it doesn't work, maybe you need to reflect on that. And that's okay too. And things aren't always going to work the way you expect it to over time immemorial, right? Things may just not work anymore. Things will change in advance as your practice changes and advances. The general public gets to say things, but you get to apply it or not. You get to participate or not. Try to listen to reason. Ask the question of yourself, is what they're saying important? Does it have any applicability? Really, I don't know. People ask me all the time, how do you know your spells work? Can you cast lightning? I said, no, I cannot cast lightning, but I have seen effectual spells that have happened in my own life. And I've seen it enough that I have enough external confirmation for my purposes to say that yes, spells that I cast do and can work and have worked, and there is repeatability. But that's from my personal experience because I was challenged whether or not that spell was real or whether or not magic even exists. And how do we achieve this barrier breaking in witchcraft? We have all these barriers. I give you all these difficult things, right? But I don't, the follow-up care is also important. How do we achieve getting through these barriers? As witches, we toil in the darkest regions. And as witches, we cast our spells to bend reality. We may or may not be able to break that. There are certain finite rules that we are subject to. Just like, for example, we're all going to die. That's a thing I think we can all agree to, right? I can't just stop that. As far as I'm currently aware, we divine outside of helical time. Divination doesn't necessarily just apply to the present moment. It can also apply to past or future, right? So we're divining a lot of information. We're seeking answers from a lot of sources. Maybe it's ancestors, maybe it's external people, maybe it's the past, maybe it's the future, maybe it's different iterations of you, maybe it's a multiversal construct. I don't know. But we have the power within ourselves, the potency and efficacy as witches to access those points, to question those things and see if we get an answer. I'm asking a lot of questions of the void and they may or may not answer. When they do, I kind of want to pay attention. So when we're working on achieving these barrier breakers, the importance is to continue to practice, even in the face if your practice is not necessarily functional. A past historian, John Ruskin, states, the highest reward for a person's toil is not what they get for it, but what they become by it. So I do witchcraft. I don't get it for accolades. I don't get anything really out of the necessary thing. I'm not looking for something coming back. Just by my work with the church, with the other people that are in the church, the management team, the practice on my own private time, all of that is for my improvement, for my benefit to be the best version of me whatsoever. When new witches ask me, oh, I'm new, I want to start, where do I start? The question I would ask is, what would you do in privacy? If no one else was around, if you were the last person on the planet, would you still practice your witchcraft the same way? Or would you even practice? That's a difficult question. For me, absolutely. I have a lot of reasons as to why I would do that. Whether or not any of you exist, whether or not any of this is actually happening, if I was alone and I was isolated, I would still be practicing witchcraft regardless. I know that that has an importance and a value to it. And so it's not what we get out of this. It's not the accolades, it's not the rewards, it's not all of those things. It's what we get to develop ourselves into, that highest construct of self. And we do that through that demonic intelligence that we were talking about earlier. We must cease our half-hearted, sycophantic, and hypocritical tantrums. whether that's online, whether that's amongst each other, whether that's whatever part of the political community, just having tantrums about this, saying, I want something to happen, and then just standing there waiting for what? Something to happen, for people just to gather? It's just not going to happen. This magically doesn't, well, not necessarily, not magically. Magic does assist what we do. I will say that, but what I will also say is this takes work. When I was working with, I also am part of a coven, the Coven of Insight in Colorado Springs. One of the things I did there was 13 full moons, the same spell for 13 straight full moons. And you know what? Whether or not spells exist, in my opinion, it does, because that certainly worked, because the coven's still been around for over 5 years, and I'm thinking that's kind of working. Point being is that I had to do something. I had to enact something. Did I want to do those rituals? Not every single time. Did I sometimes forget and have to get up in the middle of my pajamas and go wander outside in the freezing cold because I ran out of time to do it? And then that was what happened? Yeah, that happened. And that was not fun all the time. It seems to have some sort of payoff. When we are half-hearted about our attempts and what we are doing, why are we even bothering to do it? You might as well not. Do everything and commit to what you say you're going to do. Find those problems. Here's one problem that you can even, I'll give you an example. What am I supposed to be doing with my life right now? It's a great question that I'm contending with. One of the aspects that I realized is that I was looking for Masters of Divinity. Master of Divinity is probably the Abrahamic religions, short story. And from that, I know that Cherry Hills Seminary is one of the programs. They are currently unaccredited, but here, that moment right there was a time, an opportunity for me to do something. Am I going to? No, because I would do it half-heartedly, because I don't have the time, because I have other demands on my time, and there's other things that I need to be doing. That's not something I can carry right now. But they could probably maybe use some assistance. They probably have efforts to being an accredited MDiv school, but right now they're not. And within the political community that we have, that's one of the problems that you can pick up amongst many. I didn't even know that was a problem. And then I started looking, started asking the questions. I started being introspective about that, and lo and behold, there's one. But I'm not going to commit because I wouldn't be able to commit all the way. And I don't want to shoulder anybody else with that burden, because far be it for me to start something and just go, here's your problem. It'd be like me leaving the church right now at this position and just being like, good luck, and we're like, I don't know what to tell you. That would just be an unfair thing across the board for all the laity and the clergy, right? I need to be consistent, and I knew I could commit to that, and so I did. So the same thing is, don't be half-hearted about your attempts. Just don't do it unless you can really commit. Being sycophantic is dealing with people pleasing, right? Don't, if you're part of a coven or part of a group or any political community, pandering to them, trying to be liked by them is not going to help you do anything. You're now subservient to what they're doing, not by their own rationality either. That's just by you wanting to appease them and be liked. And sometimes we do just want to be liked. That's fair. It's not wrong of you to want that. But to understand that, is that really the best interest of the political community that we have? I would argue that it's not, because I'm just trying to people please instead of adding something of value, of merit, of worth from my own innate knowledge. And hypocrisy is just rampant. People claim one thing, but then can't back it up. Or they call out other people and they say, hey, you're doing this wrong. And then I say, why am I doing it wrong? And they can't even back up their claim. That's a really curious thing. This is one of a number of examples, and not even just me, it's with other people within the community too. Hey, you should practice more witchcraft because look at how successful I am. It's like, but do you really practice? Are you actually at your altar every day? Are you doing that? Are you tracking any of that? Do you challenge the hypocrisy in your own community? Do you do half-hearted attempts and then claim that you're doing somehow better? That is the kind of hypocrisy that I'm talking about. And we just do this in fits and spurts constantly, at least from the community that I've seen. And there's a lot of exhaustion and burnout and those kinds of valid things that we're experiencing. To sunder these barriers, to break them down, we must learn to compromise and communicate. You will just not get everything you want. Recall from previous sermons, you're not special. All of us are experiencing this. We're all within the system. We're all experiencing it from some lens, and it's no different than anybody else's. Yes, the people may change, but they're all very similar. Challenges of wanting to be liked, fear of reprisal, All of those things are things we're all experiencing in different ways, but they're there, they're real, and that's something that occurs. And so if we're communicating and being honest about these things, much like, honestly, I don't really want to be, I was really concerned about even having this conversation and presenting this, because what is it that me acting like a hypocrite as well, right? So I see these things, and then what did I do about it? That's a fair question to ask me, and I will address that here in a minute. But this is one way that I can address my own hypocrisy, my own fits and starts that I have, because there are things, I'm not perfect. I will make half-hearted attempts sometimes because I just didn't know, or I thought I was committed, and it turns out, guess what, I wasn't. And then I have to deal with that. And so do a lot of other people, and then they're having to, pass the buck now, and then they've got to deal with the mess that I started. That's not fair to the political community that I inhabit. And I'm going to make mistakes, you're going to make mistakes, but when we get it right, it's going to be really good. So even though we may not be special in the grand scheme of things, all of us will return to the dirt that that we all came from, that we all walk on every single day. You will die, you will return to the same source as all of us. Whether or not that's an afterlife, I'm not going to get into that debate, but basically we're all going to die and our bodies are going to molder in the ground. That's a thing. And so it's not special. We are all going to have this, but we can be special within our own groups. We can be special to ourselves. We can make that our own reality. Most things are going to be inconvenient, but your demonic control overcomes inconvenience. There are things that are going to be difficult for me. For example, I get to travel to Denver this Saturday and with Gwen, and I'm going to go do this ceremony, right, for Ostara. My God, is that inconvenient? You know how much money that takes every time that I travel to do that we shoulder? Not that I'm asking for anything. I'm saying that we committed to that. We said we're going to do that, and it's inconvenient a lot of the time, but it's important because I want to address my own hypocrisy. I'm not telling you how to do your own life and any of that stuff. I'm saying for me, I don't want to be a hypocrite saying, hey, I want you to support and not show up, right? But that's inconvenient for me in a lot of ways, but there's a lot of benefit to this. The demonic control overcomes the inconvenience. It means that my ability to ration reason, my ability to be like, this is important to a lot of people, and it's valuable to the political community. And so I'm going to I'm going to step aside from my own needs and be able to do this because of my own stability, and my own resources are available to do that. And so I'm making that active choice. To be self-accountable is really important. We need to have a self-accountability. Hold yourself to the things that you're trying to do, the things that you're saying you're going to do. This is the half-hearted piece that I'm talking about. The self-accountability is, did I do this well enough? Did I challenge myself well enough? Did I ask questions when I didn't know? Did I use divination to inform myself? Did I try to use spells? Did I try to just do the mundane things of just, maybe I just need to talk to them? Maybe that person's angry for a very valid reason, has zero to do with witchcraft, and no amount of witchcraft is going to get you to a closer answer as to why they're mad at you. You might just need to talk to them, right? There are just active physical, this level things that we're going to have to do that just kind of suck. And that's okay. We need to lash our flawed demonic intelligence. We must shape and master that demon through that spell, through those spells and that divination. Our intelligence is flawed. We don't have all the answers and all the information. Frankly, I think that if you just spontaneously knew all the information, you would just disappear into the void. I don't think you can know everything. And really, what would the point be of doing any of this? This push and pull, this refinement, this honing that we do together in this political community is part of life. It's just part of us doing this, and it refines our intelligence, because by refining ourselves, we refine the political community that we're currently in. But if none of us are doing that, or very few of us are doing that, it makes it very difficult to have any meaningful connection, any meaningful progress going forward. Stop being directed by your romantic notions. Romantic notions is also, in the older sense of the word, romantic is this ideal, this perfectionism that we have, right? So I started coming several years ago, and I thought to myself, man, I can't wait to just be in cloaks in the forest with candles everywhere. That's just nonsense. It has happened, rarely. It has happened, but very few and far between. The romantic notions that I had and what I thought were going to happen did not exactly happen the way I thought they were going to happen. I didn't think the church was going to found the way that it did, because it is the responsibility of all of the people that are involved to shape this. And it is important for me to make sure that I don't get in the way of that group direction that's happening, and to foster that as it occurs, instead of me supplanting in my own will to make it what I want, because it's just not going to do that. And you can try, but that's just going to be a fool's errand overall. So these romantic notions are great. They give us inspiration and whimsy and fancy and targets and goals for us to set. But if we're only thinking about the romantic notions that we have, we're not going to get anywhere. Then we half-heartedly start 900 coffee meetups that keep happening all the time, and then go nowhere. Because the question I would ask of those that want to do coffee meetups, by all means, coffee's great, definitely meet up. But why are you meeting up? What is the point? That's a question that I have yet to have answered whenever I've attended those, of which I have attended many. But I've asked, why are we here? Oh, we're here to meet. But then what? Are we talking about witchcraft? Are we just here to drink coffee and just be witches in proximity? Why are we here? What is the point of like, for example, my coven? Why is the coven even there? Why do they even exist? There's a purpose that we are going together and working on. And that is important that all of us are working on that same kind of purpose. But we have to do that through our rational faculties, through our intelligent demons that we have. And we can do that mundanely, and we can do that through spellcraft as well as divination. Most, if not all, of your romantic notions are going to be unattainable and unrealistic. Sucks, but it's true. Some of it can happen, but if we don't have them, we have to have at least a little bit of them, because sometimes they do. And occasionally, it's pretty cool. Another one that's going to be really important is to just do better, man. Like, I just need everybody to really work on themselves, work on this intelligence, their own rationality, have this dialogue, right? Ask why we're doing these things in witchcraft. What's the purpose of any of this? Is witchcraft just for your own betterment? Is it for the community betterment? But just do better. And by that, I mean making sure you're practicing consistently, making sure you're talking to people, making sure that you're constructive to other people, and knowing when you can and when you can't, and when it's not your place, right? Sometimes it's just not. I don't have enough information, and so I don't advocate for myself in those instances. I'm there passively to listen in an active sense, instead of trying to always dominate a conversation, because I need to learn as well. And we need to accept our harsh self-critique. That is challenging, but we can soften some of those. We can work with the entities, the deities, the magic, all of the things that we do as witches. That's one of the things that we can do to accept these, to soften this blow of this self-critique. And I know that the majority of you who have read Tarot, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Occasionally you're going to do a reading and it just sighs you right down to your quick, and it sucks. And you're just like, oh, this is terrible. I really didn't want to know this much information. And it just does that sometimes. And that is the exact thing that I'm talking about that we need more of. And also, frankly, the next part is do witchcraft. What are you doing? I don't see enough organizing to do witchcraft. Like, if you're in a witchcraft group, whether it's the church or something else, do witchcraft. That's what we're doing. We're all witches, we're all practicing. And if you don't know how to, ask the question. Be around people that know more or have had more experience that can share those things with you so you can do more witchcraft. The point of these groups is to do that, to pass through our magic. And each one of us has a different reason for so doing. I would say that it would be very important for us to shape our demonic intelligence, like we're talking about, to make sure that we're rational animals and doing the best we can for our political community. And we can do that by knowing when to listen and when to share. Those are important things. Have a reason as to why you're doing what you're doing. The Church of Witchcraft provides common practice to fundamentally provision community rituals and spellcraft. I asked myself the same question. Am I doing witchcraft? I had to, and I reflect on that consistently. I started a church so that a whole bunch of people could get together and do witchcraft. We do asbats, we do sabbats, we have these meetings. We have to address people's own bad cases of life, as Cardinal Ember has told us before and reminds me consistently. And also supporting people to do better, to give them a platform and a space to be able to have these conversations, to have these kinds of challenges, to shape and refine themselves. So am I doing witchcraft? Yes. I would 100% say that I'm doing that. I still even question myself that even the things that I've done to this point, I still question, is that really enough? And I keep asking myself, can I do more? I don't do enough, and I can answer this too, that I don't do enough witchcraft. Publicly, outside of the church, I can do more. And I have plans to do more within Nebraska, where I'm at the moment. You don't know that because I'm just in this background and I'm in your screen basically. But in Nebraska, one of the greatest things that I think that we need to do here is to do ritual, public ritual. I know what that's going to come with. I have an idea of some of that notion of what that's going to entail, but that is me doing more witchcraft. If I'm going to do church stuff, if I'm going to do witchcraft, I need to do it myself.
We got a heart.
Ah, thank you so much for that. I'm not sure if you just were reacting. Oh, yep, cool. Thank you. Appreciate it. But yes, point massively being, do witchcraft. Why are you not at your altar? Why are you not practicing? How often have you sat at your altar? When did you last talk to your deities or entities? When was the last time you worked a spell? I'm not saying do spells all the time. I'm not saying do divination all the time. But how is this integrated in your own life? The scattered approaches and our lack of demonic mastery creates a theater of mockery to historic witches and witchcraft. When you half-heartedly do this, are you really paying homage to the knowledge and wisdom of all of the witches that came before? It means wise one. That's where it comes from. And if you're only half-heartedly doing that and you're not trying to self-refine, that's just, you're just making a theater and it's just a play. And that's not really doing or going anywhere. Start things. I want you to. I encourage people to start covens, to start groups, circles, research, whatever, but do it with intent. Mean that you're going to do it. Don't be scattered about it. And if you think you're going to be scattered about it, find people that cannot be scattered about it. Have an idea. If you're an idea person, find the people that can help execute those things. I am a catalyst. That's one thing I know I do. I can get people to do a lot of things. The problem is, it's my follow through. And I know this. And so because of that, I have people around me that have better follow through and can keep me accountable because I knew that that was a weak point for me. And so I chose to take my own self-critique. And that's harsh that, yeah, you can catalyze, but you just don't know what to do with it afterwards. And that's fair, and that sucked to know. And I know that now, and I can be better for it, and I am, because then these people around that then do those things that I am less apt to do. Some of my first forays into public witchcraft really were just fraught with a lot of imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome is a real barrier for a lot of people. Some of those first forays was starting the coven. That was hard. There wasn't really anybody around that was doing anything that I was attempting to do. Hell, starting the church. This is the Church of Witchcraft, as of last year, is a 501c3. That came from the staff and the people that are around doing this, the support from the laity. That came from you guys. It came as a collective group effort to do. That is doing witchcraft. Each one of those manifestations of how we're going to grow, how we're going to support, that's what it engenders. That's what it brings to the table. And these kinds of forward progressions, these forward leaps, are directly related to the spellcraft that we do at each and every single one of the SBOTs. So do witchcraft because it's doing stuff, and that's great. And those things are hard. Me doing a public ritual here in Nebraska, I'm not really excited about doing that. I'm kind of trepidatious because that could end poorly for a lot of reasons, because of the area, because of many different factors, but it's still important to do. And so I know that I have to overcome my own things. I had to overcome them with running the coven and dealing with my own imposter syndrome, had to deal with running the church and starting that up. These are my first forays. Frankly, the church is going pretty well. It still hasn't collapsed. Everybody seems pretty supported, and there's a lot of feedback. So it seems to be working. So these first forays are important. The romantic notions that I had of what a church could be, you know, for witchcraft, which is a crazy thing to even say in that of itself. That was a random romantic notion of mine. Let's do that. And now we're here. And now things are happening. Those romantic notions are important, but getting lost in those and not having execution and doing it half-heartedly is going to be problematic. But it is possible, and things do happen because of it. Maybe not exactly the direction you thought we were going to go. And so it's important to ask yourselves, what are you doing with your witchcraft and why? Are you doing it for yourself? Are you doing it for others? Are you thinking about it ethically? Are you challenging your morals and values? Are you refining and helping others in your political community? what are you doing with your witchcraft? What's the point? I think this has a lot to do with why people kind of go, oh, witchcraft, I'm just going to do this for 6 months or do my year in a day or whatever it is, and then just sort of peter off into nothingness because they don't know why they're doing it. If there's no reason for you to do this, then why would you keep doing it? That, of course, makes sense to me. I'm giving you a reason for that. Our demonic intelligence that we have, the refinement that we can do as witches, we can use our witchcraft to shape those things, and to shape others, and to build that political community. But we can't do that if we're just randomly wandering about doing random things with no real purpose or intent or follow through or consistency. Same goes for me, same goes for all of us. See where I'm at in time. Cool. So in our wrap up, you need to master your demons through discipline and self-reflection. Our demonic intelligence, the reason that we have, the rationality that we have comes through our discipline and self-reflection. Discipline is hard and it's challenging. I get it. And it's not always going to be fun. I don't want to get up and go to work, but I need to make money to make sure that the house payment gets made so that the chapel still exists here. So I can keep paying the bills, so I can keep donating to the church, so I can keep doing these things, right? But I have to do that. That's the discipline that I have. And finding where I can really garner the best things I can out of a situation that is just inconvenient and kind of sucks. And that specifically is about timing. Some of the rituals, the days that we choose, the ceremony days that we choose, or the times that we're doing things, they're, it's cold outside, it's raining outside, I'm tired, I have bad days of life, whatever it is, there's just things that are going to be inconvenient. But if it matters to you, master that inconvenience, master your own lack of self-discipline. I have to deal with that all the time. I'm behind right now because I lack some of that self-discipline in some of those other areas of my life. And I'm using witchcraft as one of those things to bolster that for myself because I know that that's one of my challenge points right now. One of the things that this does is it interrupts our imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is the self-doubt of intellect, skills, or accomplishments amongst high-achieving individuals, right? I remember, and still to this day, there are moments that I still feel imposter syndrome. What gives me the wherewithal to stand up here, do these recordings, run this thing, right? Man, that is a tall order, I gotta say, but it's important enough. And I seem to be shouldering it okay. I haven't exploded or had to go therapy about it yet, so that seems to be going pretty well. But I still want to be around those people that I remember many years ago when I started doing witchcraft in my 20s. More seriously, more directed. I've been doing it since I've been like 4 or 5, right? But like focused, centered stuff. I was around witches that just knew so much more than I did. And I was just out there with a candle staring at the moon going, I'm a witch. Like that's enough. And then I'm talking to people that are talking about Solomonic magic and ritual craft and stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, I am not a witch. I don't know what this is, right? But the thing is, that's still important. I still had to overcome that. My discipline to practice came to, I need to know more. And so I self-disciplined and I picked up all the books and I read all the books. There is literally a library upstairs that we are working on. And I have read 90% of the occult library that exists for the church and for the coven for this very reason, because now I have that knowledge and I took the time to better myself and I had to be self-disciplined to do that. I still have to make time to read, right? Pandemonium wasn't built all that fast, right? It has its own aspects to it. Gwen's dying over here.
Well, just because Rome wasn't built in a day, you're like, pandemonium wasn't created that quickly, you guys, which is hilarious.
You also
That's the example.
Yes. They had to have discipline to do that. They had to master the rivers of lava. And they had to build that out of there. And they had to formulate the gold from the lakes of fire that were around them. Just as we need to do in our own lives, right? But that discipline is challenging. She's still dying over here. It's great. But there are still other high-achieving individuals, authors. But now my perspective has changed, right? So now I am around authors of books that are talking about occult stuff, and I am losing my mind because I'm trying to work at their level. I'm like, I don't know anything again. And that's what I need to keep seeking. I want all of you to keep seeking the same things. Those challenge points when you have those kinds of schisms. And again, do better, just across the board. And that goes for me too. You know, find the work that you need to do. Find the one that you can commit to, that matters to you, that matters to your political community. Tolerate reasonable inconveniences. Sunder the barriers with regular reflection, right? So we do better by breaking down these barriers, by planning these things, by being disciplined, by challenging our own imposter syndrome, by refining others and working in our political community. Use your spells and divination to shape your life. Guide yourself with it. I literally was doing that. I'm not sure you can see this, but actually there are 3 tarot cards that are right here that I was doing today for Ostar. And Ostar is a perfect time for us to be doing that, right? We are building these new things, these seeds of planting that we're going to drive to nurture into something else. And now's the time to do that. Also, happy Ostar to everybody. This dates this video, but also gives us some idea and some context. But seriously, like this aspect is directly in line with what we're doing with Ostara. These are the intentions that we bring, that we want to bring to our metaphorical planting, if you will, right? This doing better, these improvements that we're making. We need to lash our demonic intelligences. You're witches, and you have the ability to do so. When you say, I can't do that, it better be because you're in a hospital or you literally ran out of knowledge. Like somewhere, some way, somehow, there is a method to manage your own inner demons, right? Our reason, our ration. That's our rationale is something that we have to take charge of. And we can do that through the skills that we have. If we don't have them, ask the question. That's what we're here for. The clergy at Church of Witchcraft can absolutely guide you through that. I can't answer it for you. I can't make you experience the mystery. The mysteries are something you just have to experience. Religion is just something you have to experience. There's not any number of technical books that you can read. There's not a finite number. There's nothing. There is only your experience, your inner knowledge. But if you aren't feeding your knowledge, if you don't have those kinds of experiences because you're not taking charge and taking discipline, and you're not doing better, and you're doing these half-hearted fits and spurts, and not doing what you should be doing for your own betterment, what are you doing? Like, we just ask the question. We're here for that. You have that ability. And again, now you understand better what I mean when I say that the call to action is to guide your personal demon in relation to the political community that we all inhabit. And I need all of us to be doing that, because if it's only like 6 of us, it gets really hard. And this is what causes a lot of that burnout. We keep going, and all of you keep going. You have to drive through this. We have to too. There are some days that I just don't want to do this. There are some times that I, shockingly, don't actually want to run the sermons, but I do because it's important for that refinement. It's important to the political community that I inhabit within witchcraft. And so I do. And sometimes it's just inconvenient, but it's a reasonable inconvenience for me to do that. And it helps shape some of my imposter syndrome too, because then I can look back at all of the work that I've done, and I can physically point to the things that I've created, the things I've done. I can look at the people that have come forward and have grown in their practice of witchcraft because I did something, because I chose to do something, and then they picked up the mantle and then they did something. I didn't make them do it. I made it an option, and they decided to pick up and choose that option. And you can choose witchcraft to manage these things, to gain that relevant knowledge, to get that demonic intelligence that I continuously talk about within this. I realize that there are some things that when I was writing this, that it comes to, there are aspects of this that there are tenets within the church, but there aren't these directives. And one of the directives that I personally, and I can't make unilateral decisions, I may just pressure this in, but really shaping your demonic intelligence and dealing with that needs to be one of the things that we consistently do. Because really, as a church, as one of the directors of this, did I do enough work to put the onus on everybody else? And honestly, I don't think I did. We were able to define approximately what a witch is, but we didn't define what a witch does. And just us telling you, oh, hey, go practice forever, or here's all the knowledge of how to practice. And so you have all this knowledge. What does a witch do? This is one of the things that they do. And you need to continuously do this and continue to refine that. So go forth and be fabulous in all of those things. Also keep in mind that donations are 100% accepted because we are always having to run this stuff and get things to continue to shape the intelligence of others, to revitalize witchcraft under that flexible common practice that we talk about, and to do these changes and to support people and their own rationale as their own rational animals so that they can improve themselves and thereby improve the community too. You can find us on Facebook, Meetup, Discord. Discord's going to be a big one. We have a new server for that as well. You can get on our email list, and if you aren't, you can email us, find all that information at churchofwitchcraft.org. And again, thank you so much for being here and listening to this long expose of what I've experienced recently.